Swami Vivekananda, born Narendranath Dutt, was an Indian Hindu monk, a chief disciple of the 19th century Indian mystic Ram Krishna. He was a key figure in the introduction of the Indian philosophies of Vedanta and Yoga to the Western world and is credited with raising interfaith awareness, bringing Hinduism to the status of a major world religion during the late 19th century. He was a major force in the revival of Hinduism in India and contributed to the concept of Indian nationalism as a tool of fight against the British Empire in colonial India. Vivekananda founded the Ramakrishna Mutt and the Ramakrishna Mission. He is perhaps best known for his speech, which began with the words, Sisters and Brothers of America, in which he introduced Hinduism at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago in 1893. Born to an aristocratic Bengali Kayast family of Calcutta, Vivekananda was inclined towards spirituality. He was influenced by his guru, Ram Krishna, from whom he learnt that all living beings were an embodiment of the divine self. Therefore, service to God could be rendered by service to humankind. After Ramakrishna's death, Vivekananda toured the Indian subcontinent extensively and acquired first-hand knowledge of the conditions prevailing in British India. He later traveled to the United States, representing India at the 1893 Parliament of the World's Religions. Vivekananda conducted hundreds of public and private lectures and classes, disseminating tenets of Hindu philosophy in the United States, England, and Europe. In India, Vivekananda is regarded as a patriotic saint, and his birthday is celebrated as National Youth Day. Vivekananda was born Narendranath Dutt, shortened to Narendra or Naren, in a Bengali family at his ancestral home in Calcutta, the capital of British India, on 12th January 1863 during the Makar Sankranti festival. He belonged to a traditional family, but the progressive, rational attitude of Narendra's father and the religious temperament of his mother helped shape his thinking and personality. Narendranath was interested in spirituality from a young age and used to meditate before the images of deities such as Shiv, Ram, Sita, and Mahavir Hanuman. He was fascinated by wandering ascetics and monks. In 1871, at the age of 8, Narendranath enrolled at Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar's Metropolitan Institution. He was an avid reader in a wide range of subjects including philosophy, religion, history, social science, art and literature. He was also interested in Hindu scriptures including the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata and the Purans. Narendranath was trained in Indian classical music and regularly participated in physical exercise, sports, and organized activities. Narendra studied Western logic, Western philosophy, and European history at the General Assembly's Institution, now known as the Scottish Church College. In 1881, he passed the Fine Arts examination and completed a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1884. Narendra studied the works of Hume, Kant, Gottlieb, Spinoza, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Auguste Comte, John Stuart Mill, and Charles Darwin. He became fascinated with the evolutionism of Herbert Spencer and corresponded with him, translating Spencer's book Education, written in 1861, into Bengali. While studying Western philosophers, He also learned Sanskrit scriptures and Bengali literature. William Hastie, principal of Christian College, Calcutta, from where Narendra graduated, wrote, Narendra is really a genius. I have traveled far and wide, but I have never come across a lad of his talents and possibilities, even in German universities among philosophical students. He is bound to make his mark in life. Narendra was known for his prodigious memory and the ability at speed reading. Several incidents have been given as examples. In a talk, he once quoted verbatim 2 or 3 pages from Pickwick Papers. Once, he requested some books written by Sir John Lubbock from a library and returned them the very next day, claiming that he had read them. The librarian refused to believe him until, until cross examination about the contents convinced him that Vivekananda was being truthful. In 1881, Narendra first met Ramakrishna, who became his spiritual focus after his own father had died in 1884. Narendra's first introduction to Ramakrishna occurred in a literature class at General Assembly's institution when he heard Professor William Hastie lecturing on William Wordsworth's poem, The Excursion. While explaining the word trance in the poem, Hastie suggested that his students visit Ramakrishna of Dakshineshwar to understand the true meaning of trance. This prompted some of his students, including Narendra, to visit Ramakrishna. In late 1881 or early 1882, Narendra went to Dakshineshwar with 2 friends and met Ramakrishna. This meeting proved to be a turning point in his life. Although he did not initially accept Ramakrishna as his teacher and rebelled against his ideas, he was attracted by his personality and began to frequently visit him at Dakshineshwar. As a member of Brahmo Samaj, he opposed idol worship, polytheism, and Ramakrishna's worship of Kali. Narendra tested Ramakrishna, who faced his arguments patiently. Try to see the truth from all angles, he replied. Narendra's father died in 1884 and left the family bankrupt. Creditors began demanding the repayment of loans, and relatives threatened to evict the family from their ancestral home. Narendra, once a son of a well to do family, became one of the poorest students of his college. He unsuccessfully tried to find work and questioned God's existence, but found solace in Ramakrishna, and his visits to Dakshineshwar increased. One day, Narendra requested Ramakrishna to pray to Goddess Kali for their family's financial welfare. Ramakrishna suggested him to go to the temple himself and pray. Following Ramakrishna's suggestion, he went to the temple thrice, but failed to pray for any kind of worldly necessities, and ultimately prayed for true knowledge and devotion from the goddess. Narendra gradually grew ready to renounce everything for the sake of realizing God and accepted Ramakrishna as his guru. After Ramakrishna's death, his devotees and admirers stopped supporting his disciples. Unpaid rent accumulated, and Narendra and other disciples had to find a new place to live. Narendra decided to convert a dilapidated house at Baranagar into a new mutt or monastery for the remaining disciples. The mutt became the first building of Ramakrishna Mutt, the monastery of the monastic order of Ramakrishna. In December 1886, Narendranath took the name Swami Vivekananda. In 1888, Narendra left the monastery as a wandering monk, without fixed abode, without ties, independent and strangers wherever they go. His sole possessions were a kamandalu or water pot, staff, and 2 favorite books, the Bhagavad Gita and the Imitation of Christ. Narendra travelled extensively in India for 5 years, visiting centres of learning and acquainting himself with diverse religious traditions and social patterns. He developed sympathy for the suffering and poverty of the people and resolved to uplift the nation. Living primarily on bhiksha, Narendra travelled on foot and by railway, with tickets bought by admirers. During his travels, he met and stayed with Indians from all religions and walks of life: scholars, divans, rajas, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, parai, parayars, or the low caste workers, and government officials. Narendra left Bombay for Chicago on 31st May 1893 with the name Vivekanand, as suggested by Ajit Singh of Khetri, which means the bliss of discerning wisdom, from Sanskrit Vivek and Anand. Vivekananda started his journey to the west on 31st May 1893 and visited several cities in Japan en route to the United States, reaching Chicago on 30th July 1893, where the Parliament of Religions took place in September 1893. The Parliament of the World's Religions opened on 11 September 1893 at the Art Institute of Chicago as part of the World's Columbian Exposition. On this day, Vivekanand gave a brief speech representing India and Hinduism. He was initially nervous, bowed to Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and began his speech with Sisters and Brothers of America. At these words, Vivekananda received a 2-minute standing ovation from the crowd of 7,000. According to Shailendranath Dhar, when silence was restored, he began his address, greeting the youngest of the nations on behalf of the most ancient order of monks in the world, the Vedic order of sannyasis, a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. Vivekananda quoted two illustrative passages from the Shiv Mahima Stotram. As the different streams, having their sources in different places, all mingle their water in the sea, so, O Lord, the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to Thee. And whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form I reach him, all men are struggling through paths that in the end lead to me. Vivekananda attracted widespread attention in the press, which called him the cyclonic monk from India. The New York Critic wrote, "He is an orator by divine right, and his strong, intelligent face in its picturesque setting of yellow and orange was hardly less interesting than those earnest words and the rich rhythmical utterance he gave them." The New York Herald noted, "Vivekananda is undoubtedly the greatest figure in the Parliament of Religions." After hearing him, we feel how foolish it is to send missionaries to this learned nation. American newspapers reported Vivekananda as the greatest figure in the Parliament of Religions and the most popular and influential man in the Parliament. "I do not come," said Swamiji on one occasion in America, "to convert you to a new belief. I want you to keep your own belief. I want to make the Methodist a better Methodist, the Presbyterian a better Presbyterian, the Unitarian a better Unitarian. I want to teach you to live the truth, to reveal the light within your own soul." After the Parliament of Religions, he toured many parts of the US as a guest. His popularity opened up new views for expanding on life and religion to thousands. During a question-answer session at Brooklyn Ethical Society, he remarked, "I have a message to the West as Buddha has a message to the East." His success led to a change in mission, namely the establishment of Vedanta centers in the West. Vivekananda adapted traditional Hindu ideas and religiosity to suit the needs and understandings of the Western audiences, who were specially attracted by and familiar with Western esoteric traditions and movements like Transcendentalism and New Thought. An important element in his adaptation of Hindu religiosity was the introduction of the 4 yogas: model, which includes Raj Yoga, his interpretation of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which offered a practical meaning to realize the divine force within, which is central to modern Western esotericism. In 1896, his book Raj Yoga was published, becoming an instant success. It was highly influential in the Western understanding of yoga. The ship from Europe arrived in Colombo, British Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, on 15th January 1897, and Vivekananda received a warm welcome. In Colombo, he gave his first public speech in the East. From there on, his journey to Calcutta was triumphant. During his train travels, people often sat on the rails to force the train to stop so that they could hear him. While in the West, Vivekananda spoke about India's great spiritual heritage. In India, he repeatedly addressed social issues, uplifting the people, eliminating the caste system, promoting science and industrialization, addressing widespread poverty, and ending colonial rule. These lectures, published as lectures from Colombo to Almora, demonstrate his nationalistic fervor and spiritual ideology. On 1st May 1897, in Calcutta, Vivekananda founded the Ramakrishna Mission for social service. Its ideals are based on Karma Yoga. He founded two other monasteries, one in Mayavati in the Himalayas near Almora, the Advait Ashram, and another in Madras. The two journals were founded, Prabudh Bharat in English and Udbodhan in Bengali. Despite declining health, Vivekananda left for the West for a second time in June 1899, accompanied by Sister Nivedita and Swami Turiyanand. He then went to Paris for the Congress of Religions in 1900. His lectures in Paris concerned the worship of Lingam and the authenticity of the Bhagavad Gita. After a brief visit to the Advait Ashram in Mayavati, Vivekananda settled in Belur Mutt, where he continued coordinating the works of Ramakrishna Mission, the Mutt, and the work in England and the US. On 4th July 1902, the day of his death, Vivekananda woke early, went to the monastery at Belur Mutt, and meditated for 3 hours. At 7 p.m., Vivekananda went to his room, asking not to be disturbed. He died at 9:20 p.m. while meditating. According to his disciples, Vivekananda attained Mahasamadhi. The rupture of the blood vessel in his brain was reported as a possible cause of his death.